You loved someone deeply, not casually, not halfway. You loved them with the kind of intensity that rearranges your inner world. And then, for reasons that made sense or didn't, you had to let them go. Maybe they left. Maybe you walked away. Maybe life just pulled you apart. But here's what nobody tells you. The hardest part isn't the goodbye. It's what comes after. You thought you were strong. You made the decision. You blocked the number, deleted the photos, told yourself you were moving forward. And for a while, maybe you believed it. But then a song plays. A scent catches you off guard. You dream about them. And when you wake up, the ache is so physical you can barely breathe. And you wonder, will this ever stop hurting? If you're an empath, this process is different, deeper, more complicated, because you don't just feel loss, you absorb it, you carry it in your body. You replay conversations trying to understand what went wrong, what you could have done differently, why you can't just get over it, like everyone says you should. And here's the weight you carry that others don't see. The guilt of still feeling this much. The shame of still thinking about someone who's moved on. The fear that maybe you're broken, too sensitive, too much. You've probably heard all the advice. Time heals everything. They weren't meant for you. You deserve better. And intellectually, you know these things might be true. But emotionally, you're still tangled. Still waiting for permission to stop hurting. This video isn't about the day you said goodbye. Most of you have already done that, months ago, maybe years ago. This is about something else entirely. This is about the moment the healing actually begins. Not the surface healing. Not the Instagram caption that says you're choosing yourself. But the deep, cellular, soul-level shift that happens when you stop waiting for them to come back and start reclaiming the parts of yourself you lost in loving them. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who mapped the landscape of the human psyche, understood something profound about why we suffer after love ends. He knew that we don't just lose a person, we lose the version of ourselves we became in their presence. We lose the future we imagined. We lose the psychological projections we placed on them without even realizing it. And for empaths, this loss cuts deeper because you don't just love with your heart. You love with your entire nervous system. You merge. You intertwine. And when that bond breaks, it feels like losing a limb. But here's what I need you to understand before we go any further. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not too much. Your capacity to feel deeply is not a flaw. It's a gift. And the pain you're experiencing right now? It's not just about them. It's about every time you weren't chosen. Every time you made yourself smaller. Every time you gave more than you received and told yourself it was love. The healing we're about to explore isn't about forgetting them. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about something far more powerful. Understanding what was really happening beneath the surface of that relationship and why your psyche is still holding on. Because until you understand what you're holding on to and why, you'll keep repeating the same patterns with different faces. This video will walk you through the exact psychological and emotional process of deep healing, the kind that doesn't just close the wound but transforms it into wisdom. We'll explore the stages you move through, the inner shifts that mark real progress, and the moment everything changes. Whether you're still in the thick of the pain, or you've already started to feel the edges soften, there's something here for you. Because healing isn't linear. It's not a switch you flip. It's a spiral you walk. And sometimes you circle back to old pain with new eyes. By the end of this, you'll understand why empaths suffer differently, what Jung meant by withdrawing your projections, and most importantly, how to reclaim the energy you've been pouring into a story that's already ended. You ready? Let's begin where the real healing starts, with the truth about what letting go actually means. Here's something most people get wrong. They think letting go and healing are the same thing. They're not. Letting go is external. It's the actions you take. You stop texting. You unfollow them on social media. You stop showing up at places you know they'll be. You tell your friends you're done. You remove the physical evidence of the relationship from your life. And these things matter. They create necessary boundaries. They protect you from falling back into old patterns. But here's the problem. You can do all of that, and still be completely bound to them internally. You can block someone on every platform and still check to see if they've viewed your stories from a fake account. You can delete their number and still have it memorized. You can tell everyone you're over it and still feel your heart race when you see a car that looks like theirs. This is where empaths get stuck. You've done the external work. You've let go. But inside, the connection is still alive, still pulsing, still taking up space in your psyche. Healing is different. Healing is internal. It's the psychological and emotional work of unraveling the invisible threads that still tie you to them. It's the process of retrieving the parts of yourself you left behind in that relationship. It's about withdrawing your energy from their story and reinvesting it in your own. Carl Jung had a term for this: withdrawal of projections. When you fall in love, especially as an empath, you don't just see the person in front of you. You see potential. You see who they could become. You see the home you could build together, the life you could share, the way they could finally be the one who understands you. You project onto them your own unlived possibilities, your own need for wholeness, your own desire to be seen, valued, chosen. And here's what makes this so painful. When the relationship ends, you're not just losing them. You're losing all of those projections, all of those futures, all of those versions of yourself you imagined becoming with them. Jung believed that we fall in love not with people but with our own unconscious. We meet someone who carries a quality we've lost touch with in ourselves: strength, softness, freedom, stability, and we become convinced that they hold the key to our completeness. But they don't. They never did. That quality you saw in them, it was always yours. You just couldn't see it yet. This is why so many empaths stay emotionally entangled long after the relationship has ended. You haven't just lost a person, you've lost your connection to a part of yourself. And your psyche is desperately trying to get it back by keeping the memory of them alive. You think you're mourning them, but really, you're mourning you. The version of you that felt alive, hopeful, worthy of love. The version that believed in magic, in soulmates, in forever. And here's the trap. As long as you believe that feeling is connected to them, you'll stay stuck. You'll keep the door open. You'll interpret every sign, every synchronicity, every dream as proof that you're meant to find your way back to each other. But the healing begins the moment you realize something crucial. The feeling you're chasing was never about them. It was about you. Reconnecting with your own aliveness, your own worth, your own capacity to love and be loved. Letting go is what you do with your hands. Healing is what you do with your heart and mind. Letting go means you stop reaching for them. Healing means you stop needing them to feel whole. And for empaths, this distinction is everything. Because you can survive a breakup, you've probably survived many. But if you don't heal the deeper wound, the wound that made you give so much, that made you override your own needs, that made you believe love meant sacrifice, you'll just find another person to project onto, another story to lose yourself in. The question isn't whether you've let them go. The question is, have you started to come home to yourself? Because that's where the real healing lives. Not in forgetting them, but in remembering who you were before them, and who you're becoming now that they're gone. Let's explore why this process is so much harder for empaths, and what Jung's psychology reveals about the depth of your pain. If you're an empath, you've probably heard people say things like, "Why, you're too sensitive," or "You need to toughen up," or "Why do you take everything so personally?" And maybe you've wondered if they're right. Maybe there's something wrong with you. Maybe you do feel too much. But here's what Jung understood that most people don't. Your sensitivity isn't a weakness. It's a different way of processing reality. And when it comes to love and loss, empaths don't just experience heartbreak. They experience heartbreak through every layer of their being. Let's talk about why. First, empaths feel everything more intensely. Your nervous system is wired differently. You pick up on subtleties others miss. The shift in someone's tone, the tension in a room, the unspoken emotions floating beneath the surface. This isn't imagination. It's not drama. It's your neurological reality. When you love someone, you don't just think about them. You feel them. You absorb their moods, you carry their pain. You attune to their energy so completely that you often lose track of where you end and they begin. So when the relationship ends, it's not just a breakup. It's a severance. It's like suddenly being cut off from a part of yourself. Second, empaths amplify meaning. You don't just see a relationship as a relationship, you see it as destiny, soul contract, twin flame. The universe bringing you together for a reason. And this is where Jung's concept of projection becomes critical. Jung taught that we project our unconscious contents onto others, especially in romantic relationships. For empaths, this projection runs deeper. You don't just project your unlived potential onto your partner, you project your entire sense of spiritual purpose. You convince yourself that this person is the one, that you were meant to meet them, that your souls recognized each other across lifetimes, that no one else will ever understand you the way they do. And when it ends, you don't just lose a partner, you lose your sense of meaning, your sense of destiny, your belief that the universe is guiding you towards something beautiful. Third, and this is crucial, empaths often confuse their anima or animus with the actual person. Jung described the anima in men and animus in women as the inner opposite sex archetype that lives in our unconscious. It's the part of us that holds qualities we haven't fully integrated yet. For women, the animus often represents strength, direction, purpose, assertiveness. For men, the anima represents receptivity, emotion, intuition, connection. When you fall deeply in love, especially as an empath, you're not just falling for the person. You're falling for the projection of your own anima or animus onto them. They become the embodiment of everything you feel you lack. And because empaths are so psychologically attuned, this projection feels real. It feels like recognition, like coming home. But here's the painful truth: you didn't fall in love with them. You fell in love with the unintegrated parts of yourself that they reflected back to you. And when they leave, or when the relationship ends, you're not just losing them, you're losing access to those parts of yourself. That's why it feels like something has been ripped out of you, because psychologically, something has. Fourth, empaths attach to futures that never existed. Jung spoke about unlived life, the versions of ourselves we never became, the paths we never took, the possibilities that remain in potential. When you're an empath in love, you don't just live in the present, you live in the imagined future. You see the home you'll build, the family you'll create, the life you'll share. You feel it so vividly that it becomes real in your inner world. And when the relationship ends, you're not just grieving what was. You're grieving an entire life that never got to exist outside your imagination. This is why people tell you to move on, and you can't. Because you're not mourning a 6-month relationship. You're mourning a 10-year future. You're mourning the children you'll never have with them, the inside jokes that will never develop, the life you built in your mind. Finally, empaths often carry childhood wounds of abandonment and unworthiness that get reactivated in adult heartbreak. Jung believed that our early experiences create complexes, emotional patterns that get triggered throughout our lives. If you grew up feeling unseen, unchosen, or conditional in your worthiness, romantic rejection doesn't just hurt in the present. It pulls you back into every time you weren't enough. The person who just left isn't just the person who left. They're your father who was emotionally unavailable, your mother who was critical, the kids at school who excluded you, every authority figure who made you feel small. This is why the pain feels so enormous. Because it is. You're not just healing one wound. You're healing all of them. But here's the light in this darkness. Once you understand what's really happening, you can begin the real work. Not of forgetting them, but of integrating what they reflected back to you. And that's when everything changes. Here's something nobody warns you about. Before you heal, it often gets worse. You might have expected that after the initial shock of the breakup, the pain would gradually fade, that each week would hurt a little less. That time would do its work and you'd slowly feel better. But for many empaths, the opposite happens. 3 months out, 6 months out, even a year later, suddenly the pain intensifies. The dreams get more vivid. The longing gets stronger. The memories won't stop replaying. You find yourself crying in grocery store aisles or pulling over on the highway because a song came on the radio. And you think, what's wrong with me? Why is this getting harder instead of easier? Let me tell you what's really happening. Your psyche is ready to heal, and to heal, It needs to bring everything to the surface. Jung called this process integration. Before you can move forward, your unconscious needs to purge the material you've been repressing. All the anger you didn't let yourself feel, all the grief you pushed down to stay functional, all the truth you avoided because it was too painful to face. This is the valley, the dark night of the soul, the period where healing looks like falling apart. Let me walk you through what this typically looks like. First, there's the phase of false progress. Right after the breakup, you might have felt surprisingly okay. You threw yourself into work, hit the gym, went out with friends, kept busy. Everyone commented on how strong you were, how well you were handling it. But you weren't handling it. You were running from it. Then comes the crash, usually triggered by something small. Seeing a couple holding hands, hearing their name, finding an old photo, and suddenly everything you've been holding together collapses. This is when the real reckoning begins. You start obsessively checking their social media, not because you want to get back together, but because you need to know they're suffering too. You need proof that what you had mattered, that you weren't the only one destroyed by this ending. You have dreams about them, not sweet dreams, raw, visceral dreams where you're together again, where they're apologizing, where everything is okay, and you wake up reaching for them, and the emptiness beside you is crushing. You see signs everywhere, angel numbers, songs on the radio, synchronicities that feel too specific to be coincidence. And you start wondering, is the universe telling me something? Is this meant to work out? Should I reach out? Let me be clear. These aren't signs from the universe. They're signs from your psyche. Your unconscious is processing. It's trying to make meaning. It's searching for a way to complete a story that ended abruptly. Then comes the shame spiral. You start judging yourself. Why can't I just move on? Why am I still thinking about someone who clearly doesn't think about me? What's wrong with me? You compare yourself to them. They seem fine. They're out living their life, maybe even with someone new. And you're here, still broken, still stuck, still unable to let go. But here's what you need to understand. This valley, as dark as it is necessary. Jung believed that psychological healing doesn't happen by suppressing pain. It happens by moving through it. He called this circumambulation, the act of walking around something, examining it from every angle, until you finally understand it deeply enough to integrate it. You're not falling apart. You're breaking open. There's a difference. Every time you cry, you're releasing energy that's been trapped in your body. Every time you dream about them, your unconscious is processing material that needs to be metabolized. Every time you feel the grief, you're creating space for something new to emerge. This is also when the deeper truths start to surface. Truths you couldn't see when you were still in the relationship. Truths about the ways you abandoned yourself to keep them comfortable. The red flags you ignored because you were so invested in the potential. The times you said yes when everything in you was screaming no. The pattern of choosing people who couldn't fully meet you. These realizations hurt, because they mean this wasn't just about them leaving you. This is about you and the ways you've betrayed yourself over and over in the name of love. And this is where the real healing begins. Not when the pain stops, but when you start to understand what the pain has been trying to teach you. Because on the other side of this valley is something extraordinary. The moment when you stop seeing yourself as a victim of love and start seeing yourself as a student of it. And that's when everything shifts. There's a moment, a precise, unmistakable moment when everything changes. It doesn't happen when you think it will. It doesn't come from affirmations or forced positivity or someone new entering your life. It comes quietly, often in the middle of something ordinary. Maybe you're washing dishes. Maybe you're driving to work. Maybe you're lying in bed staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. And suddenly, without warning, you see it. You see the whole thing clearly for the first time. Not through the lens of hope or nostalgia or fantasy, but through the lens of truth. And in that moment, something fundamental shifts inside you. This is the turning point. This is when the healing truly begins. Let me tell you what this moment looks like, because it's different for everyone, but there are common threads. For some, It's the moment you realize you're doing it again, making yourself small, accommodating, giving more than you're receiving. But this time, to someone who isn't even there anymore. You catch yourself planning your day around avoiding reminders of them. You realize you've been holding your breath, waiting for a text that's never coming. You notice you've been living in a mental conversation with them, explaining yourself, defending yourself, trying to make them understand. But they're not even listening because they're not even there. And something in you says, enough. Not with anger, not with bitterness, just with a quiet, firm clarity. For others, it's the moment you realize the pain isn't really about them at all. You're crying again, and suddenly you understand. You're not crying because they left. You're crying because you've been leaving yourself for years. Every time you prioritize someone else's comfort over your own truth, every time you dimmed your light to make someone else feel safe, every time you accepted crumbs and called it a feast, this person didn't break you. They revealed a break that was already there. And in that revelation, as painful as it is, there's also profound relief. Because if the wound isn't about them, then the healing doesn't depend on them either. Jung would call this the moment when the projection begins to fall away. When you stop seeing them as the source of your wholeness and start seeing them as they actually were. A flawed human being who triggered something deep in your psyche that was already there, waiting to be healed. Here's what happens in this turning point psychologically. First, you see them clearly for the first time. Not as the idealized version you were in love with. Not as the villain who hurt you, but as they actually are. Limited, confused, carrying their own wounds, doing the best they could with the consciousness they had. And with that clarity comes something unexpected. Compassion. Not for them necessarily, but for yourself. Compassion for how hard you tried, how much you gave, how deeply you loved, how human you were in all of it. Second, you start to reclaim your energy. Jung spoke about psychic energy, the life force we invest in people, ideas, dreams. When you're entangled with someone, your energy is constantly flowing toward them. Even after they're gone, you're still feeding that connection with your thoughts, your attention, your hope. But in this turning point, you feel the energy start to reverse. It's like a tide turning. The current that was pulling you toward them starts pulling you back toward yourself. You stop checking their social media as much. Not because you're forcing yourself not to, but because you genuinely forget. Because you're busy reconnecting with parts of yourself you'd abandoned. Third, you begin to rewrite the narrative. Not to make yourself feel better, but to see the truth. You stop telling yourself this was your one chance at love, and start seeing it as one chapter in a much longer story. You stop believing they were your soulmate, and start understanding they were your teacher. You stop thinking you failed and start recognizing you outgrew the version of yourself that needed that relationship. And here's the most important shift. You stop waiting for them to realize your worth. You stop needing them to come back and apologize and validate that what you had was real. Because you know it was real. You don't need their confirmation anymore. This turning point isn't about feeling better. It's about seeing differently. And once you see differently, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to the old story. You can't reconvince yourself of the fantasy. And yes, there's grief in that too, because letting go of the fantasy means accepting that the future you imagined will never happen. But there's also freedom. Freedom to build something new. Freedom to choose differently. Freedom to love yourself the way you've been loving everyone else. This is the moment when empaths finally begin to heal. Not when the pain stops, but when the meaning changes. After the turning point, everything starts to look different. Not overnight, not all at once, but gradually. Like your eyes adjusting to light after being in darkness for too long. You begin to notice things you couldn't see before. Patterns, behaviors, the ways you contorted yourself to fit into someone else's life. And more importantly, you start making different choices. Let's talk about what actually changes when an empath begins to heal. First, you stop romanticizing the past. Before, every memory was filtered through longing. You remembered the good days, the inside jokes, the moments when you felt seen and chosen. You edited out the rest, the times they were distant, the promises they didn't keep, the ways they made you feel like you were too much or not enough. But now you remember it all. the whole truth, and you don't do this to make them the villain. You do it to give yourself the full picture. You remember the nights you cried yourself to sleep wondering why you weren't enough. You remember the excuses you made for their behavior. You remember the tight feeling in your chest when you knew something was off, but you convinced yourself you were overthinking. And with that clarity, the grip of nostalgia loosens. The past stops being this golden thing you lost. It becomes what it actually was: imperfect, complicated, and in some ways, not right for you. Second, you stop monitoring their life. This one is huge for empaths, because for months, maybe years, you've been digitally tethered to them, checking their posts, looking for clues, trying to decode whether they miss you too. But after the turning point, something shifts. You realize that knowing what they're doing doesn't give you closure. It just keeps you hooked. It keeps your energy flowing toward them instead of toward your own life. So you stop. Not through white-knuckled discipline, but because you genuinely lose interest. Their life becomes less magnetic. The curiosity fades. You realize that their story is no longer your story. And here's what Jung understood. Every time you check on them, you're reinforcing the psychological bond. You're telling your unconscious that they're still central to your sense of self. But when you withdraw that attention, you begin to reclaim your psychic energy. Third, you start investing in yourself again. Empaths are natural givers. You pour energy into others, their dreams, their healing, their potential. But during a heartbreak, that tendency intensifies. You become consumed with trying to understand them, fix them, or win them back. After the turning point, you redirect that energy, not as a consolation prize, but as a homecoming. You return to therapy, or start for the first time. You pick up creative projects you abandoned. You reconnect with friends you'd neglected. You invest in your body, your health, your education, your spiritual practice. And here's what you notice. The same energy you were using to obsess over them is now building your actual life. The same capacity you had for seeing their potential is now applied to seeing your own. Jung called this the process of individuation, becoming who you truly are, separate from the projections and entanglements that kept you fragmented. Fourth, you develop discernment. Before, you saw potential in everyone. You believed in second chances, in people's capacity to change, in the power of your love to heal them. But now you start to read behavior instead of intention. You notice patterns instead of promises. You pay attention to how people make you feel in your body, not just what they say with their words. You become less interested in chemistry and more interested in consistency. Less interested in intensity and more interested in integrity. This doesn't mean you become cynical or closed off. It means you become wise. You learn to honor your sensitivity while also protecting it. Fifth, you redefine what love means. For so long, you equated love with sacrifice, with giving everything, with being endlessly patient, understanding, and accommodating. But now you understand. That wasn't love. That was self-abandonment. Real love includes boundaries. Real love includes reciprocity. Real love doesn't require you to shrink or silence yourself. And most importantly, real love starts with you. You begin to treat yourself with the tenderness you've always given others. You speak to yourself the way you wish they had spoken to you. You show up for yourself on the hard days, on the boring days, on the days when no one is watching. This is the reclamation. This is the energy coming home. And it doesn't happen because you've finally gotten over them. It happens because you finally come back to yourself. And that's when you realize you're not losing anything. You're gaining everything. Understanding the psychology of healing is one thing. Actually walking through it is another. So let's talk about the practical steps, the specific practices that help empaths move from understanding to embodiment, from knowing you need to heal to actually feeling different in your bones. These aren't quick fixes. They're invitations to go deeper. And they work best when done with intention, not as a checklist, but as a conversation with your own psyche. Step 1. Name what you actually lost. Sit down with a journal and write this at the top. What did I really lose? Most people would write the person's name, but that's not specific enough. Get granular, get honest. Did you lose the fantasy of who they could have become? Did you lose the future you imagined? Did you lose the feeling of being chosen? Did you lose the version of yourself you became in their presence? Jung taught that we can't heal what we don't name, and for empaths, the real loss is usually not the person. It's the meaning you attach to them. When you name it clearly, you can begin to grieve it properly. Not as an endless, formless ache, but as something specific that you can honor and eventually release. Step 2. Write the brutal truth letter. This is not the letter you send. This is the letter where you tell the whole truth with no filter, no politeness, no protection of their feelings or your image. Write everything you never said. The anger, the disappointment, the ways they hurt you, the ways you hurt yourself trying to make it work, the red flags you ignored, the promises they broke. Let it be ugly. Let it be raw. Let it be as long as it needs to be. What this does psychologically is powerful. It externalizes the internal dialogue you've been having on repeat. It gets the story out of your head and onto the page, and once it's outside of you, it has less power over you. Jung believed in the healing power of expression. When we keep pain locked inside, it festers. But when we give it form, through writing, art, movement, we begin to metabolize it. Don't send this letter. Burn it. Bury it. Tear it up. Let it be a ritual of release, not a doorway back into contact. Step 3. Create a ritual of symbolic release. Your unconscious speaks in symbols, not logic, so give it a symbolic act of completion. This could be writing their name on paper and burning it, watching the smoke carry it away, gathering items that remind you of them and placing them in a box, then burying it or giving it away. Going to a body of water and throwing in a stone for every lesson this relationship taught you. Creating a piece of art that represents the relationship, then destroying it or transforming it into something new. The specific ritual doesn't matter. What matters is that you're telling your psyche, this chapter is complete. Jung understood that our unconscious needs ceremony. Without it, we stay stuck in the liminal space between ending and beginning. Step 4. Identify and rewrite your pattern. Look at your relationship history. What's the pattern? Do you always choose people who are emotionally unavailable? Do you give more than you receive? Do you ignore your needs to accommodate theirs? Do you stay too long hoping they'll change? Write it out. Be unflinchingly honest. Then ask yourself, where did this pattern begin? Often it traces back to childhood, to a parent who was inconsistent, to a need for approval you never got, to a belief that love means sacrifice. This is shadow work. This is Jung's concept of making the unconscious conscious. Because until you see the pattern, you'll repeat it. And then, write a new pattern. Write the kind of relationship you actually want. The kind of love that honors your sensitivity instead of exploiting it. The kind of partnership where you don't have to shrink. Step 5. Make a new commitment to yourself. This is the most important step. Write a contract with yourself. A set of non-negotiables for how you'll allow yourself to be treated. Not from a place of bitterness, but from a place of self-respect. Things like, I will not explain myself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding me. I will not stay in relationships where I feel consistently anxious or uncertain. I will honor my intuition, even when it doesn't make logical sense. I will not accept potential as proof of someone's character. Put this somewhere you can see it. Because healing isn't just about letting go of them. It's about standing firm in who you're becoming. These steps aren't meant to erase the pain. They're meant to transform it. To take the raw material of heartbreak and alchemize it into self-knowledge, boundaries, and a deeper capacity to love, starting with yourself. This is the work. And it's worth every uncomfortable moment. So here's where we land. The moment an empath finally heals isn't when they forget the person they loved. It's not when the memories stop coming or when they can say the name without feeling anything. The healing comes when they remember who they were before that story began. And more importantly, when they realize who they're becoming because of it. You are not broken because you loved deeply. You are not weak because it took time to recover. You are not damaged because you feel things other people can't access. Your sensitivity, the very thing that made this hurt so much, is also the thing that will allow you to transform it into something profound. Jung believed that every crisis of the soul is an invitation to individuate, to become more fully yourself, to integrate the pieces of your psyche that were fragmented, projected, or lost in relationship. And that's exactly what you've been doing, whether you realized it or not. Every time you chose to feel the pain instead of numbing it, you were individuating. Every time you questioned your patterns instead of repeating them, you were individuating. Every time you withdrew your projection and saw the person as they actually were instead of who you needed them to be, you were individuating. This isn't just healing from heartbreak. This is you becoming whole. And here's what happens when you reach this place. You don't become cold. You don't close your heart. You don't stop believing in love. You just become more discerning about where you place it. You realize that your capacity to love is a gift, but it needs to be given to people who can receive it without exploiting it. You understand that not everyone deserves access to your depth, and that's not cynicism. It's wisdom. You also discover something unexpected. The love you were searching for in them was available to you all along. Not in the same form, not in the same way, but in the quiet moments when you chose yourself, when you kept going even when it hurt, when you honored your truth even when no one was watching. That love you felt for them, that fierce, unwavering, see you at your worst and still choose you love, you can give that to yourself now. And when you do, everything changes. You stop needing external validation to know you're worthy. You stop needing someone to complete you because you're learning to be complete on your own. You stop looking for home in another person because you're building it inside yourself. And from that place of wholeness, if you choose to love again, you'll love differently, not less deeply. Empaths don't know how to love shallowly, but more consciously. You'll notice red flags instead of explaining them away. You'll honor your boundaries instead of sacrificing them for connection. You'll choose people based on who they are consistently, not who they could potentially become. Here's what I want you to know as we close. You didn't waste your time loving them. You weren't naive. You weren't foolish. You were brave. It takes courage to love the way you loved. It takes courage to stay open when the world teaches you to protect yourself. It takes courage to believe in someone's potential, even when they couldn't see it themselves. And now it takes even more courage to redirect that love toward yourself, to believe in your own potential, to stay open to your own becoming. The person you loved is gone, or distant, or changed, and that hurts. But you're still here. You're still feeling. You're still capable of that profound depth of emotion that makes you who you are. And that capacity isn't something you lost in the relationship. It's something you've always had. It's something that will carry you forward into whatever comes next. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." This heartbreak, as painful as it's been, has been part of that privilege. It cracked you open. It showed you where you abandoned yourself. It revealed the patterns you inherited and the wounds you've been carrying. And now, you have a choice. You can take all of that and use it as evidence that love isn't safe, that you're too much, that you should close yourself off. Or you can take it and transform it. You can let it refine you, teach you, strengthen you. You can become the person who loved and lost and survived and grew. The person who knows their worth not because someone gave it to them, but because they fought their way back to it. The moment the empath heals isn't when the pain disappears. It's when you look at your story, all of it, the beautiful parts and the brutal parts, and you feel gratitude, not for what they did or didn't do, but for what you discovered about yourself in the wreckage. You are stronger than you knew. You are wiser than you were. You are ready for a kind of love that doesn't ask you to betray yourself. And if you never feel ready to love someone else again, that's okay too. Because the greatest love story you'll ever be part of is the one between you and yourself. And that one gets to last forever. So take a breath. Look at how far you've come. Feel the solid ground beneath your feet. You're not the same person who entered that relationship. You're not even the same person who left it. You're someone new, someone who knows their own worth, someone who can hold their own pain without needing anyone else to fix it. Someone who has walked through fire and come out with a clearer vision of who they are and what they deserve. That person? That's who you've been becoming all along. Welcome home. If this resonated with you, if you found yourself in this story, I want you to know something. You're not alone in this. The path we've walked through today, the pain, the turning point, the reclamation, it's a journey thousands of empaths are walking right now. And while this video has given you the map, sometimes we need support for the actual journey. Not because you're not strong enough to do it alone, but because healing happens faster and deeper when we have structure and guidance. I've created something for people who are ready to go deeper into this work. It's called the 30-Day Empath Healing Journey, and it's designed specifically for what we've talked about today: withdrawing projections, reclaiming your energy, and building a new foundation of self-love and boundaries. It's not a course you passively watch. It's a daily practice: journaling prompts, embodiment exercises, Jungian shadow work, and rituals that help you move this understanding from your head into your life. If you feel called to it, you'll find the link below. There's no pressure, no urgency, it's just there if you need it. And if you're not ready yet, that's completely okay. Bookmark this video. Come back to it when you need to remember what you're moving toward. Share it with someone who's still in the valley. Let it be a reminder that healing is possible, and you're already on your way. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for choosing to heal instead of harden. You're going to be okay. Better than okay. You're going to be free,